You should never rule out a credit union when starting or growing your business.
Welcome into this episode of the NiceJob Podcast. If you like what you hear, please like the video and don't forget to subscribe to get new episodes as they're released. Remember, you can get the entire episode on our podcast platforms. All right, let's see who our guest is today.
Hi, I'm Mark Ritter. I'm going to tell you about the best kept secret for financing your small business.
Welcome in to another edition of the NiceJob Podcast. So glad that you are here trying to make yourself a better business owner and a better person as well. And I'm excited about this episode, and you know, I say that almost about every episode, but this one in particular is one that I can say for certain that I'm not an expert on. So right along with you, I'm going to be learning some great things from our guest today. And without further ado, let's introduce him. It is Mark Ritter, the CEO of MBFS in New Direction Lending. Mark, thank you so much for joining us here on the NiceJob Podcast.
Sean, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
And we can kind of dive right in by learning a little bit about you. I don't need to go all the way back to the history of, the hospital you were born in, but one thing in particular I'm always interested with our experts is kind of, I like to say where that path started. And what I mean by that is, when did you kind of either get drawn to the field? Was it, you studied it in university or college? And then when did you decide to get to a position where you are now where you kind of wanted to share your message and help others and not just keep all that institutional knowledge to yourself? So where did the journey really start to, that concrete really start to solidify for you?
My background is that I'm a native Pennsylvanian and grew up in a small town, industrial town as you can get. The cities were just some remote thing that were in movies for me. And after college, I always kind of had that financial slant, but instead of Wall Street and big banking, I really enjoyed one-on-one community, working with small business, more of that community setting. And about 20 years ago, I got hooked up in the credit union community, and it was a brand new industry at the time. Credit unions, people loved credit unions, and they always went to credit unions, but they didn't help small business, and it was this new deal at the time. And I started up a program at a local credit union almost 20 years ago now, and we grew it into one of the biggest in the country among the credit unions with very small loans. And I really enjoyed helping credit unions then and their local communities grow. So about 10 years ago, I became the CEO of MBFS, and subsequently we started up New Direction Lending, where we help people get loans through credit unions. We're owned by credit unions for their credit union members.
And so this might seem like a pretty basic question, but one thing I like to do on this podcast is make sure that we're bringing everybody along with us as we dive into the conversation. I will say when I was a bit younger, going into high school, things like that. So, a lot of my financial prowess was, an account my grandmother set up for me and whatever's in my right or left pocket. And I kind of would see, the financial institutions, around, I also kind of grew up in around Pennsylvania, New Jersey area, things like that. And I would see credit union and I would just see the regular banks, and I kind of just assumed it was a branding thing. But there's actually a difference between a credit union and some of the major banks, or at least there's a different distinction. Can you kind of describe what a credit union is and how it might differ from perhaps some of the bigger banks out there?
Sure. And first of all, I'll be the first one to say a car loan is a car loan. Okay. I like to think that we do it with a smile and nicer, but a checking account's a checking account, a credit card is a credit card. What really differentiates what a credit union is the philosophy behind it and why we're there and how they operate. When you look under the covers, what a credit union is, it's a cooperative institution. There's no shareholders. There's no shareholders to suck the profits out of the institution. It is owned by the members who have accounts there and operated and managed by a board of directors that's elected by the people who have accounts there, the members of the institution. So what you get is that community banking local feel because you're part of the organization. And that trickles down to everything they do because they're not as profit motivated as some other types of institutions. We can charge a little bit more or less on our fees. We can charge a little bit more on interest. We can pay a little bit more on deposits. But more importantly, we can have the conversation and do what's best for people instead of just lending out of a box. And that works great for your small business community.
I was going to say that even before you said that, that's kind of where my mind started to go, is that, as a small business owner, perhaps a credit union, is going to, it's not to discourage, kind of the big banks like that, but you're going to get kind of a little bit more of a connection because the mindset and the focus and some of the options that are available might be a little bit more conducive kind of to certain situations. And could you kind of give us the introductory guide? If I want to be a small business owner, I have some things at my disposal, so maybe some equipment, things like that, but I'm ready to kind of to scale and be a full-fledged business and give it a go. If I'm looking to take on a loan, is there a certain particular loan that I might want to consider first? Or what's that general process look like? If I have internally, I want to make the decision, how do I now turn it into action?
Sure. And keeping in mind, I lend money for a living. But the first thing is I always tell people is don't go into debt unless you absolutely have to.
Oh, yeah, that's very good. Very good point.
Look to manage and do that self-finance, do the savings, look to scrape, look to buy used. Don't go out and say I need to buy a building the first thing. No, that's not. Keep that capital and use that capital and do as much as you can without taking on that loan. The used equipment and used furniture and everything else and friends and family are great resources. But eventually your business grows to the point where you need more capital. You need more resources. You need equipment. It's not practical if you're a truck driver to pay $150,000 for a truck. So that's when you come to people like me. And if you're just starting out, the first thing that we always look at for that new businesses, or maybe you want to buy a business and acquire a business, always the best fit is an SBA loan, which is a loan guaranteed by the government, and that's really to help people out. There's also a ton of state programs that help people out in depending on what state you live. The cheapest and best, most accessible loans are always those government-backed loans, because really what we're trying to do as a lender is to help you succeed, but we're also helping to try to protect the assets of the credit union. And we're looking at if you can pay back, first of all, can you pay back the loan? But more importantly, do you have the ability and does this business loan make sense for you? We don't want to overburden you with short-term loans if that's not the best fit for you. If you're buying long-term assets, let's get you a long-term loan. If you need short-term money, let's get you a short-term loan. So, and many times people get scared by the horror stories that they hear from SBA. That right now, the SBA program right now is the friendliest federal agency in the United States. And people can't believe that sometimes, but right now they're issuing your lender a 90% loan guarantee with absolutely no fees to anybody. So if I have a 90% guarantee as a lender, I'm going to be willing to go out and lend that money. And you can use that money for working capital. You can use it to build signs. You can use it to hire people. You can use money for anything you want. So that's always that first step.
Should you have some sort of relationship with your credit union prior to going in, maybe asking for a loan or things like that? Or is it something that even without that you can go in? Because I feel when some people hear about that of, all right, finding the right fit is they might not have accounts at credit unions. They might not have accounts, at some other places. How much does having a relationship prior either help with the process, or is that just about maybe speed because you would know, but it's not really going to affect eligibility? How does the pre-relationship work?
The lowest hanging fruit is always where you have a nice relationship now. And many people don't consider the credit union, which is one of the reasons I like being the Pied Piper of credit unions. Over 100 million people belong to credit unions. Where else is it easiest to show that you're a creditworthy individual other than where you have and shown you're a creditworthy individual? So if you're a member of a credit union, stop and check them out. And credit unions also are very friendly in working with each other. So maybe they don't do business loans, or maybe they're not a fit for your business loans on what they do. A lot of times they'll be able to help and refer you to another credit union that does. They're very friendly with each other and work together well. Our company is owned by 13 credit unions, and we work with over 75 credit unions, and we have relationships with hundreds of credit unions. So if you don't know where to go, check us out. If we don't have somebody in your backyard, we'll connect you with somebody who does. So when you're working with that, trying for that initial person, and maybe you don't have any credit union relationships, the odds are in your town, it used to be, you had such and such teachers, employees, credit union, and they only help that person. Well, I can tell the listeners that if you're driving past a credit union right now, there's probably a 95% chance you could go in and open that account. And when you go in, you'll be able to sit down and have the conversation and say, tell me about who you are and what you do. And keeping in mind, they have local money, local depositors whose goal is to put that out into the community and keep that cycle of money going, to make a successful small business and this local community. So the nice thing about what I do is nobody's protesting in the streets against their local credit union, because we have we're kind of like the nice uncle who's always giving you what you want. We can help you out and have a conversation and lead and guide.
And I love that, because obviously, with NiceJob, we deal with reputation marketing. Is that also kind of plays into, one of the things we think that successful businesses do is that connection to the community. And, with the credit union trying to really focus locally and do things to help that greater community. You as a small business, perhaps if you're able, it's the right fit. As we're always saying, each situation is unique in that sense. But that's the right fit. Building that relationship with the credit union, even beyond just kind of the loan element of it, is probably good for your community growth as well. Because credit unions in that sense, because they're so locally focused, it's probably got to be a little bit more pride for you guys to see the local business really kind of grow from within, and knowing that you guys are part of those key steps. Correct?
Absolutely. And credit unions are generally set up to help the smallest of the small. So maybe you're starting out and just want low-cost checking account. People pay a ton of money to have their business a checking account when your local credit union could give it to you pretty inexpensively. And we have programs maybe when you need that first injection of working capital, either an SBA loan or through our New Direction lending, and can really help you grow as you expand through the life cycle. We're not set up for huge middle market lending. That's not what we want to do. Even though some credit unions are pretty big, they like the community-based locally. We want to work with somebody where we can point to them and say, that's the owner and he's employing people in the community.
One thing I definitely want to touch in with on you is that you kind of talked about, the SBA loans, but is there anything else that you'd want to mention or kind of bring up as potential other options, for someone, as we talked about, that's in that early growth stage?
Almost every state in the country has a state agency program to help people out. The SBA 7A program is the biggest. It's the biggest in the country. The USDA, surprisingly, the same people who regulate milk, have small business programs for that cover almost 95% of America, and that's a fabulous program. Our company did close to $300 million in the PPP loans last year through credit unions that we put into that. I think that's not going to be coming back anytime soon. But really, if you check in with your local community development corporation, the local CDCs, the local small business centers, they tend to be, they're looking and begging for these types of businesses. There's SBA micro lenders who are really focused on giving people those small loans, maybe up to $20,000, $30,000, $35,000, and this is their sole mission. So there's, no matter what cycle you're in, there's always somebody and a source for money. It's really matching and find those lenders who say, boy, you're exactly the small business that I'm looking for. So, and that's where we say, don't get frustrated. If you go to this elite private bank that wants only doctors and lawyers, and they say, no, we're not interested in you. There's somebody in your life cycle that wants your business.
It's like the grade school dance, right? You might be standing on opposite sides of the room, but deep down, everyone's there because they want to dance, just finding the right partner. We do have listeners from all over North America and actually looking at the stats all over the world as well. But if someone was interested in either just learning more about you or just trying to, make a connection with you in some way, where should we direct them towards?
Sure. There's credit unions all over the world. There's credit unions all over North America. We are very active on LinkedIn for MBFS and New Direction Lending, with new spelled NU. Or you can check out our website at mbfs.org. And if you're just interested in learning more or seeing if there's a credit union in your area that can help out small businesses, let us know. We'll try to match you up.
Awesome. We will have that linked wherever if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening on any of the audio platforms, we'll have that link in the description below so you can connect with Mark and visit and learn a bit more. But Mark, always a pleasure to have guests on this podcast. But this in particular, when it's a subject I knew I didn't have much advanced knowledge on, I really appreciate it. It was a whole lot of fun, and I hope you enjoyed your time as well.
Thank you. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks so much for checking out the video. Remember, you can listen to the full episode of our podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Buzzsprout, or wherever you get your podcasts. Here on YouTube, I want to invite you to subscribe by clicking right there, or you can check out 2 other videos. One, our most recent podcast, and the other to learn a little bit more about NiceJob. So click one of those things, and I can go home.